US President Joe Biden says it's looking tough for a temporary ceasefire agreement in Gaza by the start of Ramadan on Sunday. Biden, speaking to reporters after visiting a family at their home near Philadelphia, also says he's concerned about violence in East Jerusalem without a ceasefire. He also announced that US military will set up a port in Gaza to assist in humanitarian aid. For more on this, let's now cross live to our correspondent, Alex Cadier, who's in Jerusalem. Alex, a very good evening to you. Now, President Joe Biden is reported as having said, look, it's looking tough for the ceasefire talks before Ramadan. But Alex, talk to us about the issue of the much needed aid that was being channeled through to Gaza. Reports indicate that 5 people were killed during an Airdrop effort. What is the latest in this regard?
Well, yeah, we heard that people were killed by that airdrop of aid going into the Gaza Strip. They were killed, we understand, from witnesses on the ground. These are unverified reports, but we've had it from witnesses on the ground after a parachute failed to open. Now, the US has said it was not their airdrop and that their missions, the 4 airdrop missions that the United States has conducted over Gaza, went without any issues. But actually, this is a reminder of why there is a big focus on a maritime corridor, because actually those airdrops, although they are clearly a sign that a variety of countries, including EU member states in the United States and Jordan, want to have aid go into Gaza, each aircraft can only carry 1 or 2 trucks worth of aid, whereas a larger ship would be a much more substantial amount. And that is why the United States says that they want to build that temporary pier in Gaza, allowing larger ships to deliver much needed, desperately needed aid to the Gaza Strip. We know that smaller ships from charities coordinated by the European Union are already going to set sail either today or tomorrow, this weekend, from Larnaca in Cyprus, then sailing 2 to 3 days to get to the Gaza Strip. They will have to figure out how to unload the aid, but there's 60 days it will take to build that port. Those charities, those ships, not waiting that long and sailing straight for Gaza now.
And Alex, the sighting of the moon is expected tomorrow or Monday, which will signal the start of Ramadan. What are the expectations then around the ceasefire talks? Do you know if they will continue during this period?
Well, they will continue. That's what we understand. They will roll on into next week as well. The latest we have is that just yesterday, the director of the CIA, Bill Burns, met with David Barnea, who's the head of the Mossad, the Israeli intelligence agency in Jordan, we understand from reporting. And that is showing that the conversation continues. These talks are ongoing. The United States still talking to Israel about the conversations Bill Burns, the CIA director, had in Egypt and in Qatar. So still trying to mediate, primarily those 3 countries, Qatar, Egypt and the United States, trying to mediate a deal. But those sticking points over how to end this war, sticking point over Hamas providing a list of hostages that are still alive, which it says it cannot do, and Israel allowing men of fighting age to return to northern Gaza. That's a condition set by Hamas. As far as we understand it, those have still not been resolved. And particularly the concern here in East Jerusalem is that the tension that would come out of a failure to reach a deal, and the tension linked to an Israeli military operation in Rafah should a deal not be struck, that tension may spill over to this city.
And with that in mind, Alex, then what is the general mood like among Palestinians and Israelis, who many had hoped that the tensions would have been resolved at this point as they observe this sacred period? And maybe just touch lightly on maybe giving us more details about how this very important point that you touched on earlier, about how this artificial port might actually work.
Well, looking at the port specifically, we understand that it will take 60 days to be built. 1,000 U.S. military personnel will be involved in building it, and we know that the U.S. military is rushing to do this as quickly as possible. It will allow larger ships to dock, because the ports in Gaza have all been basically been destroyed, and even before that, they could only host smaller shipping boats, and not the kind of larger aid ships that we would expect would be needed for an operation of this scale, particularly with the United Nations saying in the last few days that a quarter of the population of Gaza is on the edge of famine. And that's really the scale of the challenge here, the scale of the human suffering in Gaza. And therefore, that artificial port is really that crucial link in the chain. We know the European Union and Cyprus have been working on establishing that maritime corridor for months now. It's been in discussions in Brussels and in Cyprus, but now that final link in the chain, that port built by the United States, will really enable that to accelerate. In the meantime, while those 60 days, we're waiting for those 60 days to be completed, that port to be completed, smaller ships will sail to Gaza, and they will have to figure out a makeshift way to get the supplies delivered. And then the question of distribution in Gaza, of course, remains a real issue.
Thank you so much for that. We're going to leave it there. That is Alex Cadier, SABC News correspondent in Jerusalem for us.